we've got to spend time in camp working on those, and then make sure that we don't hesitate. You know, that's the biggest thing, is to play fast.
Bobby, with the new schedule, what kind of urgency do you kind of put on certain areas of concern? Do you kind of look at it more toward the back end and build it toward that, or you try to focus on it right away, and just choosing the offensive line in particular?
Yeah, the one thing that's good about this camp is we'll have a lot of competition. You know, so what we'll do is we'll go about the first 7 days and really install everything, and then we'll come back and repeat it, and that's where we want to see some guys make strides in understanding and competing for the starting job or backup job, or, you know, setting the depth. What I always tell the players is that it's up to them to show their teammates who the starter is. You know, the players know, so you got to go out there and block people and run full speed and tackle people and show your teammates you should be the starter or the backup. But you know, it's you basically take the first 2.5, 3 weeks and just work on getting better at the game of football, and then you still have 2 weeks to prepare for that opener.
Bobby, you look back at past camps, leaving personnel out for a second. What are some of the things you think your team's gained over the course of those 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it is, in terms of where you start and where you finish?
Yeah, you know, number one thing you want to do is find out who the leaders are. We're going to do it a little bit different this year, where normally we would vote for captains today. We're going to wait until a week and a half into practice so we can see who the real leaders are and how hard they're going to compete. So that's one thing that this camp does, is set the standards for who your leadership is. We want to see a real positive attitude, you know, and we want guys that are looking forward to coming to practice and willing to work and can learn. They're going to get tired, they're going to get sore, but they need to come to work with a good attitude and get better each day out in practice. It's really important for us to improve on our technique and fundamentals, become better football players on an individual basis, and try to perfect our craft. You know, we want to really understand the details of our position and perfect what we do, and then eliminate errors. You know, that's the things you got to do, is eliminate errors. So one of the most important things in the first game of the year is to not beat yourself. You know, to win that first game, you can't beat yourself.
Coach, the schedule seems a little more front-loaded in importance than usual. National TV game against the Big Ten foe, big conference foe on the road, defending national champion at home. Does that affect how you put your system in, or put plays in this period before the season? Do you feel more rushed and need to put more in earlier than you might if you were, say, opening against Kent State?
No, not really. You try to work on your conditioning a little bit different. You know, we conditioned really hard in the month of July, where some years it's more about quickness and change of direction. This year was really about running a little bit more distance than normal. We had a conditioning test, which we haven't done for a long time. We wanted to get leaner and be able to really make sure that our offensive line and defensive line are in great condition. So that's a part of it. Like a year ago, you were setting your things for the second game of the year, Syracuse. Everything on scrimmages, and we had 1 week where we didn't really prepare for our opener. We prepared for Syracuse. But I think you're going to see this be the standard now for the ACC. I think you're going to see early schedules that mean a lot and that are tough, and particularly with the network coming in. And you know, there's some marquee matchups in other conferences late in the season. You know, we all understand who drives the college football schedule, and that's why we have good matchups early in the year in our conference. So I think you're just going to see it be the standard. We just have to know how to do it.
Running back room got a little banged up during the spring. How's that group looking? Any word on Colin Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot better. They should all be healthy. Reggie obviously is in great shape and tested off the charts. I mean, his strength and explosion and speed. We got his weight exactly where we wanted that. He's just the guy. You ask him to do something, he's going to do it and get it done. Jeremy Smith should be back healthy. It is an injury that you have to be careful with, so you could see us maybe give him a day off here or there sometime, just to make sure that he doesn't re-injure it. Malik Williams is 100% healthy and doing good. He's bigger and faster and leaner than he's ever been, so I'm excited about him. I really felt like last year he was just coming on and just getting into it, and then he got injured. So that'll be fun to see him back. Trey Smith is a guy that is getting himself in a position where he can contribute and help, and we feel confident with him in there. He does need to improve on his pass protection, so that would be something. To get more reps, you have to protect the quarterback. Colin got cleared. He's here. He'll be ready to go and do everything.
Rob was under your wing for so many years. What was it initially that motivated you to bring him onto your staff here?
Here?
Yeah.
When I first got the job here? Yeah, I mean, he was hurt, so he was down in the training room down there, and he was rehabbing something from an injury in the NFL, so I used to stop down and talk to him all the time. And then when I got the job here, he just so happened to have a little brother who was really good. So he was one of the first things I did was hire Jeff, and he was qualified. He had the pedigree, he had the knowledge, he played for Bill Walsh, one of the greatest, offenses in the NFL at the time. And I really enjoyed coaching with Jeff because he always had ideas and different ways to do the same play with motions or shifts or, and that's what I like in the offensive meeting room. I like guys with ideas, and, I'm not afraid to do stuff new. I think that makes everybody better, and Jeff was always really good at that. And then when I got the Western job, he called me up and he said that I've really made the decision now, because at that time it was always, does Jeff really want to coach or not coach, or he doesn't need to. But he said that I made the decision. I really want to be a head coach now. Something that's really important to me. I would love to come back and get with you, and it all kind of worked out exactly the way we thought it would.
You said earlier you might have been facetious that we're getting softer. There are people who think football is too hard, that the concussion issue is potentially going to kill the sport. What's your view going forward, and what needs to happen?
How you feeling?
Better, thank you.
Well, that's good. Before I came in here, Rocco said, I didn't think Tim had a heart. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm glad you're feeling good. No, the concussion issue is something that's a concern. The rules have changed. We're doing a really good job, I think, with the training staff and the medical staff and the procedures that you have to do to clear a young man and to make sure he's healthy and ready to go and play again. I think it's something that's a concern for everybody at every level. We teach tackling different because of it. We do a lot of things, because of it. The helmets are better. And I wasn't really talking about the collisions and the physical part of the game. It was just the number of practices and how much you're on your legs and that thing. It's a physical, hard football game. Although the rules have changed for that too. You can only have so many practices and pads, so many tackling practices, and I think it's all good to try to keep guys healthy.
Do you think it's an existential threat to the game?
That's a big word for a football coach to think about. But I think it's a concern. Yeah, I think it's a concern.
You mentioned Joe Bidet and the strength staff. What do you want to see from the strength staff and during a summertime in between spring and fall?
Yeah, they spend so much time with these guys. Is that the first thing you want them to do is to coach everybody, and these guys do that. I was always, when I was an assistant, some of the strength coaches that you're around and been around, they really like to coach the guys that like to lift. Probably the guys that need it more than anyone are the guys that don't like to lift. So they have to be great motivators and teach them how to get better and show improvement. There's nothing more that motivates a young man in the weight room than seeing himself improve. We take pictures of them, we show differences. They do a number of things to really motivate them to change their body. Another big part of it nowadays is nutrition. You know, making sure they really understand what to eat, you know, when to eat, when not to eat. What do I want to do? You know, if you don't eat after 9 o'clock, we're in pretty good shape there with our big guys. That works, and it really works. So they need to make sure they do that. So that's a big part of it. But you know, you're trying to get your young men in the most powerful, fastest that they can be at the highest weight with the lowest percent of body fat. So it's a good challenge for all of them.
Where'd the idea of the bell come from? The ring the bell thing?
That came from me. Yeah, I can't take credit for it. I was in Reno, Nevada. I think the gym was called 10-0 or something like that. And my kids were in gymnastics. So, and the way they ran their program was you had 10 skills that you needed to work on to master. And you had a little belt around, and every time you got the skill, they put a star on that belt. So when you filled it up with 10, then you moved up the next level. But in the gym, what you also did when you mastered that skill, you tested on it, you mastered it, you passed it, you ran over it, and you rang a bell. And everybody in the entire gym would look around and go, "Oh, cool! Katie just passed. She just got her, you know, backflip." I thought, that's the best motivation I've ever seen. Is that you're motivating positive reinforcement. So what we try to do with it is, in the weight room, when you get your all-time best or your max, your personal record, that you get up and run over there and ring the bell. So we work all year long to be able to go out in that stadium and play 12, 13, 14 times. So what you want to do is go out each week and try to have your best all-time performance. And if we can do that, that's considered ringing the bell.
Buck, how have you seen things that you stressed in spring kind of reinforced over the summer, like the strategy or I'll say technique and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, now we get to work with them over the summer, so we continue on with it. In June, we still have meetings, and we still can go to workouts and watch their you know, individual drills and quickness and change of direction. So you kind of go back and review actually what we did in spring, but kids continue to learn and get better at it. And then the coaches go on a break, and when we came back this year, usually you have you know, 2 weeks to do it again. This year we were cut short a little bit because we're starting so early, but you know, our players need a little break too from the coaches, so that's a reason why we do that too. But it's way different, you know. That's why I believe you see true freshmen playing throughout the country, is because they're here all summer. You know, when they first arrive, they're out of their comfort zone. They slip and fall when times they've never slipped and fell before. You know, couple weeks they're like, I'm as good as these guys. A couple weeks later they're like, yeah, I think I can get in the rotation and start or compete for it, and now they get to play. Whereas before they would come in 3 days before camp started. We tried to coach them up and love them up, and then when the vets got here, you kind of like said, okay, you're over here in scout team, you know, and kind of thought going in that everyone would redshirt, but it's changed completely.
With the veterans, how have they kind of put the end of last season behind for what you can see?
Yeah, we just go to work. That's what you do. You go to work, and you know, you can be motivated by your successes, or you can be motivated by your failures. And I think the one thing you need to keep in mind is all the great things that we did, all the successes that we had, and we have to address why we didn't succeed and learn from it and get to work.
What did you think of how that group, the top group, finished out spring on the offensive line, and then the new guys coming in? Will the true freshmen have a chance to get in there?
Yeah, I liked how we finished out. You know, Robbie Bell and Schiller inside at center competing. Robbie got the nod in the spring game, and I thought he did a good job with the exception of 2 snaps. You know, but he's doing a good job with his pad level. He gives us a little more thump inside in the running game, and then he does a nice job in understanding what we want to do with our protections, and he's not afraid to lead, and you know, did a good job there. I liked the move to Cole, jumping in there with the ones at guard. I do think there needs to be some competition for that position, and we need to push him hard and see where he's at. Cole carries himself different now than when he first got here, so the confidence level is very high going into practice. You know, Jaron's a guy that is tremendous talent, played real well at times. He needs just to compete and, you know, work hard, and you know, we might try him in a couple different positions here in camp and see what's going on there. Kenny Thomas is in unbelievable shape. He's completely changed his body. I think he had 23% body fat the other day, which for an offensive lineman is off the charts, you know, and he's running, and he's got himself in a position where he really wants to have a great year. Lucas McNeil just benched I think he benched 400 pounds the other day. When he got here, he could do 225, so he's worked extremely hard, and he's tough and physical. His challenge is to just focus and concentrate one play at a time, not let other things outside affect his concentration. I would expect him to have a really good year, him and Jaron. Mekhi Becton is a guy that, you know, is huge. He walks in the room with those other guys, you think those other guys are little. You know, Mekhi's 6'8", 245. I was on it, hey man, we're going to have to get his weight down. We're going to have to get his weight down, and we throw him in the bod pod, and he's 25% body fat. His weight's probably not going down. You know, it's just not. But he's agile, he's strong, so he comes in a very strong man. And he needs to compete and rotate in there and make somebody else get better or take their job. I think that would be important and something that could really help us. So,
as far as the stadium construction, do you plan on spending any more time, maybe especially with the kickers, getting them used to what the background on this north end is going to be like with the construction, and getting them used to the environment that will be there at least for this season?
Boy. You know, you've got to be real careful what you say to kickers. I didn't even think about, like, the background in the kicking. I don't know. That's a good question. That's a great question. I'll have to think about that one. But I try to, you know, be real careful what you say to a kicker.
Bobby, just some thoughts about the construction, though, in terms of the image that it's sending, the message it's sending, the boost that it is for so many people.
Yeah, it's really exciting. You know, it's really exciting for us to bring guys on campus and see what it's looking like. And, you know, I really had no idea they would have this much done and this, you know, and started out front like that. Obviously, we've got some challenges on how we get to the practice field, how we get to the game field. It's going to change, you know. We just have to have a great attitude about it and do whatever we have to do. We will get to the practice field. It might take us a little bit longer, but I guarantee you we'll be out there.
Last one right here.
Bobby, what do you make of the trend of ever earlier recruiting, kids 9 and 10 being offered college scholarships? Where are we going with this?
It's a little comical, yeah. I mean, I think some of it is driven by certain coaches wanting their name in the paper. And, you know, saying, yeah, we offer this guy, he's 8 years old. I don't know. I don't really get it. You know, I really like to have him on campus and get to see him and watch him practice and, you know, be at summer camps, you know, so you get to see him in person. You know, that was one of the fun things we had this month is we had a light up the Ville camp, and we had a bunch of really good players out there running around having fun and competing, and we get to stand right there with them and talk to them and watch them. And you know, there's so much more to recruiting than, you know, like here's an example of it. Is one of the players we were recruiting this year said, yeah, at our high school we've got the top running back in the 2021 class. And I'm thinking, now how would you possibly know who the top running back is in the 2021 class? You've never been to California, never been to Montana. You know, they might not have them in Montana, but you've never been there. How the heck do you make that statement? You know, that's the thing that I don't get is how you make that statement. And I'm thinking, if I'm alive in 2021 recruiting, I'm good. So, you know, it's just, it's a little bit comical and it's a little bit, you know, out there. And, you know, it really means nothing. You know, that someone says they offered him when he was in 8th grade. because everything changes, you know. It all changes.
I'm sorry. Do you have an idea who your number 2 quarterback might be? And
I got a pretty good idea. Yeah.
okay.
Juwan Pass.
And
6'6", 226. He's really strong. He can really throw it, and a great runner.
And do you have any plan to have a series or two, put him in for a series or two and give him some experience this year?
Should we do the Howard Snellenberger, put him in the second quarter?
I'm just asking.
No, I thought about it, but I might get booed out of the stadium. You know, how do you sit the Heisman Trophy winner down and bring in? You know, that was one of the. We went and played at Tulane, and it was like playing in church on a Sunday. There was nobody at the game, and the biggest noise the entire game is when I took Stefan out and put Brian in, and Stefan's family was booing me. That was the loudest noise in the whole game, so I'm probably not going to do that. Thank you. Appreciate it.